Hey, social media family. My name is Ms. Mosea, and you are taking part in deep diving dialogue with Ms. Mosea. We're about to getting ready to celebrate Father's Day, but there was a man who was the first person to get a jacket, as they would say in the West Indian community, or the first man known to raise somebody else's child. And where is this story found? Or where is this knowledge acquired? Ta-da! King James Version of the Bible. And this is the New Jerusalem version of the Bible. And where will we be starting today? Today we'll be starting in the first book, that first book of Genesis, and we are starting at the 26th verse. And I will be reading from both versions of this passage, from both the KJV and the New Jerusalem text. Now, in Genesis 1, it says, God said, "Let us make man in our own image, in the likeness of ourselves, and let them be masters of the fish of the sea, the birds of heaven, the cattle, all the wild beasts, and all the reptiles that crawl upon the earth." God created man in the image of himself. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. That is the New Jerusalem version of that occurrence. I am now going to go into the King James Version, reading the same passage, because, you don't want them to say, oh, she's reading from one of those funny Bibles, so it's not the same, or it doesn't read the way it's supposed to read. No, I'm going to read from both, right, so that it's a clear understanding of what we're reading. And again, I am reading from Genesis 1, verse 26. And in the KJV, it says, "And God said, Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth." English. Dominion. Can be masters of dominion. Okay. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him, male and female created he them. And God blessed them, and God said unto them, "Be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth, and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over every living thing that moveth upon the earth." And God said, "Behold, I have given you every herb bearing seed, which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree in the which is the fruit of a tree yielding seed. To you it shall be for meat." First he starts with the herbs, right? Then he gets to all the other stuff. Yeah, okay. "And to every beast of the earth, and to every fowl of the air, and to everything that creepeth upon the earth, wherein there is life, I have given every green herb for meat." And it was so. And God saw that everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good. And the evening and the morning were the sixth day. Now I'm going to go back to my New Jerusalem. I had stopped at verse 27. I'm going to continue at verse 28. "God blessed them, saying to them, Be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth, and conquer it. Be masters of the fish of the sea, the birds of heaven, and all living animals on the earth." God said, "See, I give you all the seed-bearing plants that are upon the whole earth, and all the trees with seed-bearing fruit. This shall be your food. To all wild beasts, all birds of heaven, and all living reptiles on the earth, I give all the foliage of plants for food." And so it was. God saw all he had made, and indeed it was very good. Evening came, and morning came, the sixth day. Now we're in chapter 2. Now in chapter 2, what it does, it gives you the prequel to See, the male and female, he created them, right? Because everybody's like, well, in the first book, it says he already had created man and woman, and then it talks about in the chapter 2 that, it's after Adam went to sleep. Well, chapter 2 is explaining how he got to verse 27. Right? It gives you the prequel. What went through his mind? What was going on? Why did he design? So here we go. Thus heaven and earth were completed with all their array. On the seventh day, God completed the work he had been doing. He rested on the seventh day after all the work he had been doing. God blessed the seventh day and made it holy, because on that day he had rested after all his work of creating. Such were the origins of heaven, earth, when they were created. Now, this at the time when Yahweh God made earth and heaven, there was as yet no wild bush on the earth, nor had any wild plant yet sprung up. Everything that was on the planet was here because it was designed to be here. There was nothing wild. No wild bushes, no wild plants. Everything that was here for a reason. For Yahweh God had not sent rain on the earth, nor was there any man to till the soil. So because rain didn't come down, and because man's hands weren't involved in tilling the soil, nothing was wild. Because if you check it, the Most High didn't really create the human man to really have to work. Maybe be aware, be mindful, but to actually have to go and slave and wake up in the morning and be at that job by 7 and you can't wait to get off by 3, or get there by 8 and can't wait to get off by 4, or get there by 9 and can't wait to get off by 5. That was not the Most High's intention for our existence, but we're going to see why we got to this point. Okay. Thus heaven and earth were completed with all their array. On the seventh day, God completed the work he had been doing. He rested on the seventh day after all the work he had been doing. God blessed the seventh day, made it holy, because on that day he had rested. Okay, we're at the bush. For Yahweh God had not sent rain on the earth, nor was there any man to till the soil. However, a flood was rising from the earth and watering all the surface of the soil. Yahweh God fashioned man of dust from the soil. Then he breathed into his nostrils a breath of life, and thus man became a living being, right? Because in chapter 1, verse 26, it doesn't say how he created. He said, and let us. Another question is, who's the us, right? I personally think it's his heavenly host, right? And anybody can come up with their own ideology of who the us is. But he said, and let us. But in chapter 1, he doesn't really go into detail of how he did what he did. Now he's given us the science of how he did what he did, right? And after the breath of life, and thus man became a living being. Yahweh God planted a garden in Eden, which is in the east. And there he put the man he had fashioned. Yahweh God caused to spring up from the soil every kind of tree, enticing to look at and good to eat, with the tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil smack dab in the middle of the garden. A river flowed from Eden to water the garden, and from there it divided to make 4 streams. The first is named the Pishon, and this encircles the whole land of Havilah, where there is gold. The gold of this land is pure, bdellium and onyx stones are found there. The second river is named the Gihon, and this encircles the whole land of Cush. The third river is named the Tigris, and this flows to the east of Asher. The fourth river is the Euphrates. Yahweh God took the man and settled him in the Garden of Eden to cultivate and take care of it. Then Yahweh God gave the man this admonition. He said, you may eat indeed of all the trees in the garden. Nevertheless, of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you are not to eat. For on the day you eat of it, you shall most surely die. Dun, dun, dun. Yahweh God said, it is not good that the man should be alone. I will make him a helpmate. So from the soil Yahweh God fashioned all the wild beasts and all the birds of heaven. These he brought to the man to see what he would call them. He said, okay, I'm going to throw them at Adam, see what kind of names put on things. So, you had the dodo bird. I wonder how the dodo bird presented himself to get the dodo. But yeah, and like the name stuck. Then he brought, the man gave names to all the cattle, all the birds of heaven, and all the wild beasts. But no helpmate suitable for man was found for him. So Yahweh God made the man fall into a deep sleep. He's like, okay, back to the drawing board. He's searching. He looking for somebody. Let's create him a somebody, a helpmate. It made him fall into a deep sleep, and while he slept, he took one of his ribs and enclosed it in flesh. Yahweh God built the rib he had taken from the man into a woman and brought her to the man. The man exclaimed, "Oh my God!" He's like, "Look at you. You look like me, but you have maybe longer hair. Who knows? Maybe she had ribbons. I don't know." This at last, he says, is bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. This is to be called woman, for this was taken from man. So I'm man and you're wow, so we'll call you woman. Let's just attribute that to why we're called woman. Or it could be he could see our womb and he said okay, or maybe he had an insight. But I think it was wow. Wow. Woman. Wow. Right? This is, in verse 24 of chapter 2, this is why a man leaves his father and mother and joins himself to his wife, and they become one body. Now, both of them were naked, the man and his wife, but they felt no shame in front of each other. They felt no shame, they felt no lust, they felt no desire, nada. It was like nothing. Young people, little children, frolicking. Oh, nobody sees their sexuality because everything is innocent until somebody, and most times it's an adult or somebody that the family knows, introduces a bad scenario. Chapter 3, the fall. The serpent was the most subtle of all the wild beasts that Yahweh God had made. He asked the woman, "Did God really say you were not to eat from any of the trees in the garden?" The woman answered the serpent, "Well, we may eat the fruit of the trees in the garden, but of the fruit of the tree in the middle of the garden, God said, you must not eat it, nor touch it under pain of death." Now, when Yahweh said it to Adam, he said, "You shall surely die." Eve says under pain of death, which means she may not have heard it firsthand because it doesn't say, and Yahweh repeated the admonition that he gave to Adam, right? So I'm assuming Adam said, "So Eve, let's have a convo. Let me break down the policies and the movements of the God and what's allowed, what's not allowed. These are the rules and regulations. This is how we get down." So Eve was like, "Okay, okay, Adam, I hear you, I hear you." But maybe Adam's tone and the Most High's tone was a little different tone, so she may have received it, maybe just didn't fully digest it. Anyways, here we go. So, she says, "But the fruit of the tree in the middle of the garden, God said you must not eat it, nor touch it, don't even touch it, under pain of death." Then the serpent said to the woman, "No! Oh, you must have heard that all wrong. You will not die." Like, die, bite it, die. No, that won't happen. God knows, in fact, that on the day you eat it, your eyes will be opened and you will be like gods, knowing good and evil. The woman saw that the tree was good to eat. He's like, I'll be like gods. I'll be even better than Adam because Adam was here first, right? It's not like I came and then there was Adam. I opened my eyes and there he was. Like he was waiting for me to come. And I'm a little disappointed that I wasn't first. You know how we women, we always want to be in charge. Anyway. So, the woman saw that the tree was good to eat, pleasing to the eye. Gets a little deeper. And that it was desirable for the knowledge that it could give. So she took some of its fruit and ate it. She gave some also to her husband. Listen to this. She gave some also to her husband who was with her. He ate it. He was with her and he ate it. Stop. Let's stop right there. He was with her and he ate it. So when the serpent said to Eve, "Oh, ye surely wouldn't die," wouldn't that have been the best time for Adam to say, "Oh, hold up there, serpent. So what you doing? You calling God a liar? Because he said if we eat this, we will surely die. Eve, let's go." No, he didn't do that. No, he didn't do that. Let me tell you what he did. He said, so she took some of its fruit and she ate it. She gave some also to her husband, who was with her, and he ate it. Then the eyes of both of them were opened, and they realized that they were naked. Oh! So they sewed fig leaves together to make themselves loincloths. Now, there's something that happened here in this eating, right? First of all, the tree, we're going to go back up, right? We're going to go back up to verse 5. Then the serpent said to the woman, "No, no, you will not die. God knows, in fact, that on the day you eat it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like gods, knowing good and evil." The woman saw that the tree was good to eat. Now, not the fruit, the tree. Now, there's another word that men like to use to describe their what, otherwise known as like wood, tree, right? How does one look at a tree and say, you're so desirable? I can understand looking at the fruit on the tree, but the tree itself? What kind of tree is that? Anyways, engaged in the tree, okay? And it was desirable for the knowledge that it could give. So she took some of its fruit and she ate it. She gave some also to her husband who was with her and ate it. And their eyes of both of them were open. Now, I don't know what kind of fruit you would eat that would all of a sudden make you see the nakedness in somebody else, or that person see the nakedness in you. But I know if people sample certain fruits, right? What do they call it? Busting somebody's cherry? Taking bites out of people's bananas? Mm, mm, Now, this is just contemplation, right? You don't have to take my word for it. You can read it and see for yourself. But it's interesting, and we'll get further. The man and his wife heard the sound of Yahweh. I'm in verse 8 now. The man and his wife heard the sound of Yahweh, God walking in the garden in the cool of the day, and they hid from Yahweh God among the trees of the garden. But Yahweh God called to the man. "Where are you?" he asked. "I heard the sound of you in the garden," he replied. "I was afraid because I was naked." Yahweh's like, naked? Who taught you that word? Who taught you that concept? What does that even mean, to be naked, Adam? The man replied, "No. Who told you?" No, Yahweh says, "Who told you that you were naked?" he asked. "Have you been eating of the tree I forbade you to eat?" Have you been eating of the tree I forbade you to eat, Adam? You eating what, Adam? What you doing, Adam? The man replied, "It was the woman you gave me. She invited me into a situation. The woman you put with me, she gave me the fruit, and I ate it." I know Yahweh must have been sick. You kidding me, right? The woman replied, "The serpent tempted me with the wood. The serpent tempted me with the wood, and I engaged. And I even bring Adam into the temptation with the wood." And I know y'all watching this saying, "Oh, this here Miss Mosea, she must be tripping." Not trip. Checking. Then Yahweh God said to the serpent, now this is what Yahweh says to the serpent. "Because you have done this, be accursed beyond all cattle, all wild beasts. You shall crawl on your belly and gnaw dust. Every day of your life I will make you enemies of each other. Every day of your life I will make you enemies of each other. You and the woman, your offspring, and her offspring. It will crush your head and you will strike its heel. It'll crush your head and you will hinder its movements. It'll try to crush you down and you gonna make sure it can't get nowhere. What a cycle. But this is what he's saying to the man and to the woman eating seed. No, to the serpent and the woman that partake in the fruit, the seed of the fruit, right? To the woman, he said, I will multiply your pains in childbearing. You shall give birth to your children in pain. Your yearning shall be for your husband, and he will lord it over you. Your yearning shall be for your husband, and he shall lord it over you. He said, you shall give birth to your children in pain. Your yearning shall be for your husband, yet he will lord it over you. So it seems like, first of all, between the serpent and the woman, he says, I will make your offspring and her offspring enemies. The serpent's offspring and the woman's offspring. Now, we know women don't have seed, right? We as women, we need seed in order for the womb to develop the life. But in this case, Yahweh said, your offspring and the serpent's offspring will forever be enemies. Interesting. To the man, he says, because you listen to the voice of your wife. He could have said, because you listen to the voice of your wife and said nothing. You just listened to her and took part of the fruit of the wood. Accursed be the soil because of you. The very ground that gives life is cursed because the man chose to keep his mouth. The man, not the woman, because the fella chose not to say anything when he should have, when he could have. Accursed be the soil because of you. With suffering shall you get your food from it. Every day of your life it shall yield you brambles and thistles. You shall eat wild plants. Remember, there was no wild plants. Remember, there was no wild. Nothing was wild. It's all wild now. With sweat on your brow shall you eat your bread until you return to the soil, as you were taken from it, for dust you are, and dust you shall return. Then the man named his wife Eve, because she was the mother of all those who live. Now, is Adam named Adam because he's the father of all who lived? We don't get that instruction or that acknowledgement. But we do know that Eve is the mother of all those who live. Yahweh God made clothes out of skin for the man and his wife, and they put them on. Then Yahweh God said, see, the man has become like one of us, with his knowledge of good and evil. He must not be allowed to stretch his hand out next and pick from the tree of life also, and eat some and live forever. So Yahweh God expelled him from the Garden of Eden to till the soil from which he had been taken. He banished the man and in front of the garden, and of Eden he posted the cherubs and the flame of a flashing sword to guard the way to the tree of life. Cain and Abel. Now, check it. The man had intercourse with his wife Eve, and she conceived and gave birth to Cain. I have acquired a man with the help of Yahweh. Listen to what Eve says. Now, it did say the man. Now, in chapter 4, it says the man had intercourse with his wife, and she conceived and gave birth to Cain. I have acquired a man with the help of Yahweh, she said. She gave birth to a second child, Abel, the brother of Cain. Now Abel became a shepherd and kept flocks, while Cain tilled the soil. We're going to jump from here. We know what happens with Cain and Abel. They don't get along. They wipe out They actually cancel each other out. But before we acknowledge how much they cancel each other out, we go and jump over to chapter 5. Now remember, this this message today, or this conversation today, or this dialogue, this deep dive in dialogue, is about the first man that raised another man's child. And who was that man? Adam. And how do we know this? It's confirmed in chapter 5. Let's get into it, shall we? Sorry, it's confirmed at the end of chapter 4. Chapter 4, verse 25. Adam had intercourse with his wife. Now, in chapter 4, it says the man had intercourse with his wife, Eve, and she conceived. At the end of chapter 4, it says Adam had intercourse with his wife, and she gave birth. Now I'm going to go to Genesis in the KJV, right, because we want to keep it balanced. And at the end of chapter 4, verse 25, it says, beginning of chapter 4, it says, and Adam knew Eve his wife, and she conceived and bare Cain, and said, I have gotten a man from the Lord. And she again bare his brother Abel, and Abel was a keeper of sheep, but Cain was a tiller of the ground. And in process of time it came to pass that Cain brought the fruit of the ground an offering unto the Lord. Now in the KJV it says, and Adam knew his wife. In the New Jerusalem it says the man. In chapter 5, at the end of chapter 4, it says, and Adam knew his wife again, and she bare a son, and called his name Seth. For God said, she hath appointed me. For God said, she hath appointed me another seed instead of Abel, whom Cain slew. I'm going to read that again. And Adam knew his wife again, and she bare a son, and called his name Seth. For God said, she hath appointed me another seed instead of Abel, whom Cain slew. And to Seth, to whom also there was born a son, and he called his name Enos. Then began men to call upon the name of the Lord. Chapter 5. This is the book of the generations of Adam. In the day that God created man, in the likeness of God made he him, male and female. Created he them and blessed them, and called their name Adam, in the day when they were created. And Adam lived 130 years, and begat a son in his own likeness, after his image, and called his name Seth. Now, when we read chapter 4, there was no acknowledgement of Adam seeing Cain and Abel in his likeness, in his image. Chapter 5, it says, it wasn't until Adam was 130 that a man-child was born to him in his likeness. I'm going to go back to the New Jerusalem Bible, coming out of chapter 4. Adam had intercourse with his wife, and she gave birth to a son, whom she named Seth. Because God has granted me other offspring, she said, in place of Abel, since Cain has killed him. A son was also born to Seth, and he named him Enosh. This man was the first to invoke the name of Yahweh. Chapter 5, it's called the patriarchs before the flood. This is the role of Adam's descendants. On the day God created Adam, he made him in the likeness of God. Male and female he created them. He blessed them and gave them the name man on the day they were created. When Adam was 130 years old, he became the father of a son in his likeness as his image, and he called him Seth. Adam lived for 800 years after the birth of Seth, and he became the father of sons and daughters. So, in chapter 4, Adam says nothing. Adam has nothing to say. Eve gives birth, she says, by the help of Yahweh, because Adam is not involved in this. Adam doesn't even see himself reflected. He doesn't see his image. He doesn't see his likeness. Adam has nothing to say. Adam doesn't say anything until chapter 5, verse 3. When Adam was 130 years old, he became the father of a son in his likeness as his image, and he called him Seth. Cain and Abel were named by their mama because Adam had nothing to say. Why did Adam have nothing to say? Because in chapter 3, when the woman was offered the fruit and he was standing right there, and he could have said, Eve, Eve, no, Eve, no, we cannot do this, Eve. You can, Eve, put on the wood, Eve, come, let. No, he did none of that. So as we get ready to celebrate fathers, I want to say a big special thank you to all the dads out there who raise children that aren't theirs. You're very special. You're appreciated. You're not the first. As we can see, Adam was the first to do that. But to all the dads out there, always remember to speak up. And to those men out there that are raising other men's children, you're the real superhero in all this. Stay blessed and look out for another deep dive in dialogues with Ms. Mosea. Peace out, y'all.